Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars. I'm here today to bring you another classic film review, and today's classic film review is for the 1986 action thriller, and also many consider a horror, The Hitcher, a film that is directed by Robert Harmon, and it stars, of course, Rutger Hauer, C. Thomas Howell and Jennifer Jason Leigh. Now what I'm going to do here, because there are a few Hitcher films out there, well I say a few, there's three certainly that I am aware of. There's this one. There is the sequel to this film that some of you may not even know exists. There's a second one called The Hitcher 2, I've Been Waiting. And there's obviously the remake from 2007 with Sean Bean. I'm going to review all of them. Now, obviously, this is one of my favourite films from the 80s. I have seen the sequel, Hitcher 2, a number of years ago. And I remember not particularly hating it, but obviously not thinking it was anywhere near as good as the first one. And I have never seen the remake from 2007, the Sean Bean one. So I have ordered all of them. I've got this one now, I have got the Sean Bean one on the way, and I have got a DVD version of The Hitcher 2 on the way, because you can't get it on Blu-ray. So I'm going to rewatch all of them and do a review of them. So I've already rewatched The Hitcher. And what do you get with this film for somebody who has never seen it? Well, this film focuses on C. Thomas Howell's character, Jim Halsey, who is doing he's taking basically a rental car across country to deliver it to California. Along the way, he's getting very, very tired in this rainy night driving across the desert. And in order to try and keep himself awake, he notices a hitchhiker on the side of the road. He stops to pick him up, and it turns out that this hitchhiker, played by Rutger Hauer, is a psychopath serial killer who tries to kill Jim, wants him to stop him. Jim escapes, and then Rutger Hauer's character, John Ryder, as he calls himself, proceeds to make Jim Halsey's life a living hell by committing a series of brutal murders and pinning these murders on him. And this all leads to a final confrontation between the two characters. Right, what are my thoughts on The Hitcher? Well, this film, as I've said, is a real classic from the 1980s. It is an absolutely fantastic film. It's a film I've watched consistently throughout all my life. It's one of those that has stood the test of time. And it is just a really invigorating watch for a number of reasons. Now, I think the two leads it. I mean, Rutger Hauer gets all the plaudits for this film. Rightly so. He's absolutely fantastic, Rutger Hauer, in this film. He plays the character pitch perfectly, and there's not as many actors, could do villainous roles as good as Rutger Hauer. And he was one of those actors that could seamlessly do most roles, really, heroic characters or villainous characters. And he plays, I think, one of the most iconic screen villains here in this character, John Ryder. He plays him to the point where you're just not sure. Is this guy, real? Is he mystical? Is he some kind of, ghost or spirit? He plays it very mysteriously, almost like, he's like one of the old Western characters, Pale Rider, where people think that Clint Eastwood character is coming back for vengeance and all this kind of stuff. And you almost feel like this is almost like the Rutger Hauer character in this film, some ghostly figure that just appears on this highway. And from memory, they do play around with this concept a little bit in the sequel, the second one, Hitcher 2, I've Been Waiting. They play around with this concept a little bit more. But Rutger Hauer is incredible. Very intense, comedic almost at times, and very imposing on screen. And, it's just brilliant to watch him. But I also think C. Thomas Howell does an absolute brilliant job. A young actor at the time, making his way in Hollywood. And he plays his character, Jim Halsey, who is pushed to the edge of sanity by Rutger Hauer's character. I mean, and you really do see that evolution of his character, Jim Halsey. The desperation that he gets to, the point where, he almost commits suicide. And that bit in the car where Rutger Hauer, Jim Halsey actually thinks now he's safe, and these two officers are going to take him in because he just made a deal with that captain on the radio. And then up rides Rutger Hauer and kills the people in the car. And Jim Halsey's reaction, C. Thomas Howell, it's a great response. It's a great performance by him. And I love the way they almost like play around at the end with, you know, the evolution of Jim Halsey and the fact that he becomes like this cold-blooded killer by the end. And again, they do play about that from memory a little bit in the sequel, The Hitcher 2, with because C. Thomas Howell is in that film. My understanding is that C. Thomas Howell was actually afraid of Rutger Hauer on set because of his general intensity in his performance and things like that. And Rutger Hauer apparently did a lot of his own stunt driving and things like that in the film. I get why people as well these days consider this more of a horror now. When I was younger, certainly, I didn't really consider that. I considered it more of an action film. But there are definitely some, definitely horrific elements to the film. It doesn't hold back. There's some very brutal and gruesome scenes in the film, but when you actually look at the film and rewatch the film, it doesn't actually show a lot in regards to the deaths. When Jim Halsey, pulls up to the station wagon with that family in it that he tried to warn, all you see is some blood dripping on his shoes, but you get the impression from his reaction, the brutality of what he's just seen. The same with the police in the police station. You don't see what happens to them. All you see is the after effects, and especially the dog, licking the blood off, the officer's neck, which is gruesome enough. In the restaurant cafe thing, whatever you want to call it, when he picks up the finger and he's about to eat it, I mean, that in itself is really gruesome, but it just absolutely worked. It's just a wonderful 80s film. It's one of those 80s films that if someone says to you, right, name 10 of your favourite 80s films, this probably wouldn't make most people's list because the decade was just so strong. But in the next breath, people would go like, oh, The Hitcher. Wow, that was such a great film. You know what I mean? Things like The Hitcher and Midnight Run and things like that, they'd be like, oh, God, that was a great film. I'm actually considering doing a top 10 of my favourite alternative 80s films. The kind of films that don't make people's top 10 lists because the more mainstream type things make it. But for me, this is a timeless film. Really enjoyed revisiting it. On my next Blu-ray collection update video, I'm going to show you the copy that I've got for this on Blu-ray. I've had to have it imported because it's just not easy to get on Blu-ray, certainly in the UK, a UK version. Well, should I say, I've got I think it's a German import, but you can't get it in the UK in regards to a UK one with a UK cover. You know what I mean. So there you go, guys. The Hitcher, an all-time classic from the 1980s. I'm going to revisit the sequel, and I'm going to watch for the first time the remake. I'm not expecting miracles from the remake, but in my experience, the remakes are not usually as bad as people make out, but I'm certainly not expecting it to be anything close to this one. So let me know in the comments, guys. Is this one of your favourite films from the 1980s? And I will be back with plenty more videos and reviews and content on the channel very, very soon.